Hi, mystery writers. Welcome to Write a Killer Mystery. My name is Zara Altair. This is where we learn to make a good mystery great. And today I want to talk about novel tension basics for mystery writers. First, I want to thank my supporters on Patreon who help support this series and my writing. And if you would like to become a patron and support all this information about writing mysteries, there's a link in the description below. So, tension creates anticipation. You know that toward the end, your story will have a big scene between your hero sleuth and the villain, and it will be tense. And you can't wait to write that big scene and whether it's with weapons or wits, your hero must face down and defeat that villain. But before your reader gets to that scene, you need to lead them through pages and pages and pages of your mystery novel. So every scene needs tension to build anticipation for what comes next. And that's how you get your readers to keep reading until they reach that big scene. Beginning writers have so much to tell and want to jam everything into the story. But without tension, your story will feel episodic without urging the reader on to discover what happens next. And you need tension in every scene. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't need to be like that final confrontation. And it shouldn't be. But building anticipation, scene by scene, keeps your readers wanting more. So now there's a difference between tension and conflict. Tension builds anticipation. Tension builds when you present the threat of something happening. Your reader feels the threat and wants the threat to be resolved. And as an author, you create anxiety for the welfare of your protagonist sleuth. Conflict is when the threat is happening. The threat is now. It's conflict, it's fight time, and the same thing. It's a battle of wits or weapons. It doesn't matter. It's conflict. So once you resolve a conflict, you need to build new tension to keep your reader anticipating danger to your sleuth. And that danger can be emotional, psychological, or physical. So to continue creating tension, you need to build anticipation no matter what happens in your story's conflicts. So you want to make every scene tense. In other words, you want tension in each scene because each scene is a mini story that advances the overall mystery puzzle. And scenes build on previous scenes, and as the story progresses, you heighten the tension by raising the stakes of what happens at the end of a scene. So you want to create scene dynamics that lead your reader through your character's change in each scene. I've talked about this before, but let's review what the sequence is. First, you have the entering emotional state of your point of view character at the beginning of the scene. And then they have an objective. What do they want to have happen in that particular scene? Your reader needs to know. And then there's some kind of conflict, what impedes them from getting what they want in the scene. And you need some kind of motive for the antagonism. So you need some understanding of the other character's motivation. And you need the character's worldview. What belief system is he operating in? And I'm going to talk about a little bit more about this in a minute. And then there's the tactic, what actions the character takes in the scene to achieve their objective. And remember, dialogue is action. And then there's the turn. Does the character get what they want in the scene? What comes out of the conflict? And what causes their emotion to change? Was their objective achieved? Yes or no? And what is their exiting emotional state? And if it's not the opposite of the entering emotional state, it at least has to be different. So that's a lot to put into a scene. So the tension pivot for the scene is the turn, and the exiting emotional state builds anticipation for what comes next. So every time you have a conflict, you want to follow up with building more tension. So when you alternate action and reaction scenes, you leave a question in the reader's mind at the end of each scene. So you think of the scene ending as a tiny cliffhanger, urging the reader to turn the page. So just to double check on creating that scene is you need to know the purpose of each scene, and this will help you create scenes that drive the story forward. And to guide you through the scene as you write, I suggest creating a one-sentence statement of what happens in that scene. This is your little signpost for you as a writer. For example, George wants Janine to confess, but he has the wrong suspect. So with just that one sentence, you have an idea of the beginning emotional state, the expectancy, and the ending emotional state, disappointment. And the turning point will revolve around something Janine says or does that shows George he's headed down the wrong path. So I highly encourage you to do this for each scene. Write that little one-sentence statement, because a clear statement like this helps you form the tension in the scene. It's more explicit than a scene note like George interviews Janine. That really doesn't tell you anything about the emotional state or what's going on. So let's look at some tension elements. As a writer, you have a choice of elements to build tension in the scene, so you don't need to use all of them. You get to pick and choose. It's like a smorgasbord of tension ideas. So when you vary the tension elements, you'll avoid a repetitive feeling in your story. So the idea is to mix and match the elements in each scene. So first of all, is there an internal conflict for your protagonist? And is there an external conflict with the protagonist from an outside force? So, and just as I said, you get to mix and match. There can be both in a scene, or you can pick one and emphasize that. So is there something left unsaid between the characters in a scene? Is there something the reader wants to know, but it's left unsaid? And so they're like, well, but it's what you want. You want them to anticipate something happening, and when it doesn't happen, they're going to keep turning the pages to find out. Do the characters in the scene have well-defined motivations? Does the reader know what's at stake for the main character in the scene? Is something preventing that main character from succeeding, and we need to know what it is? And does the reader know more than the protagonist? Is there a sense of anticipation in every scene? And does anticipation build throughout the story, leading to the climax? I'm going to talk a little bit about raising stakes in a minute. So you want to create hooks at the beginning and end of each scene. You want to start late, leave early to plunge your reader into the scene and build hunger for more at the end. It's just such a good guideline. I'm going to say it again. For each scene, you want to start as late as possible and leave as early as possible, because you can generate little questions in your reader's mind. You use your scene point of view, character's emotion change to create that tension and make sure the emotion is different at the end of the scene than it was at the beginning. The reader feels it, and if you miss showing the beginning emotional state, that change won't feel as strong at the end of the scene. So what may feel explicit to you at the beginning it's like a key for your reader to know how your character is feeling at the beginning of the scene and what they expect. You want to know the turning point because it's the high moment in the scene. So show your main character changing from one emotional state to another, and you're bringing the reader along point by point. So now let's talk a little bit about raising the stakes scene by scene. As your mystery progresses, each time your protagonist enters a scene, there are stakes. And writing each scene with stakes that your hero will win or lose builds tension. And as you get closer to revealing the villain in your mystery, raise the stakes in each scene. You want to make the decision or the action that happens in that scene more significant. When the results of the scene are crucial, your reader can't help but turn the pages wanting to know more. So you build anticipation for what will happen and the consequences of failure. So I came up with this little tension formula to kind of help you organize the tension in your story, because tension is the ingredient that moves your reader on, eager to find out what's next. And in order to create tension, you need 3 ingredients. First, the reader must care about the character. So you want to build empathy for your character. It's the cornerstone of tension. If the reader doesn't empathize with the character, caring what happens isn't going to happen. They have to care. So you have to get your reader involved with your character. Then you have consequences. So you have the reader must care. Then you have the consequences. What are the consequences of your hero either winning or losing what they want in this particular scene? The reader needs to know the impending consequences of a decision or action. If your character makes a wrong decision or her actions are inadequate, your reader needs to know what could happen. And then, more importantly, for building your story, the third point is each conflict leads to more tension. So each obstacle or conflict with its known consequences leads to more questions. So how will your character respond to their failure? Or what are they going to do with their win? Now that they've won, they've still got to solve the mystery. What's at stake if they lose? So you want to follow conflict scenes with reactive scenes, because you're setting up the new tension. You're setting up the new idea of what is going to happen next and what is the new problem that your sleuth is going to solve. Okay, that was a lot of information, but tension is really important, and I really wanted to stress that tension and conflict are 2 different elements, because tension is what keeps the reader reading, what keeps them turning those pages. Conflict is something that engages your character and your reader, but without knowing consequences and building tension for those consequences of the conflict, it's just going to be a fight scene or a battle of wits, and your reader isn't going to care as much. So I hope that helps. Please, if you have any questions, leave an answer. Leave your question in the comments below. Thank you for watching. That's it for this episode of Write a Killer Mystery. If you're struggling to get your mystery written, there's a link to the Write a Killer Mystery course in the description below, and that will take you from your story idea to writing the end and everything in between, building your characters, creating your story, getting your setting right, doing your research, everything that goes into writing a mystery. It's all there, and it leads you by the hand, step by step, to write a killer mystery. Okay, keep writing.